They say the forbidden woods never return what they take. Alpha King Jet believed this when he sealed 13-year-old Arya in a shallow grave, leaving her for the Shadow Walkers to devour. She was broken, an Omega who smelled like prey, a stain on their bloodline that needed erasing. He heard her cries as the dirt covered her face. He felt nothing. 10 winters passed. Jet's pack grew fat, then desperate, then starving. The game vanished. The rivers dried. Their children's ribs began to show. With nowhere else to turn, the Alpha King did the unthinkable. He sent men to beg mercy from the monsters in the woods. But when the Shadow Walkers answered his plea, they didn't come alone. They came led by a ghost. The girl buried in shame returned as a queen forged in shadow, and she brought an army that could swallow his world whole. Hey, hold on. Before this girl makes the Alpha King who buried her beg for mercy, let's make a deal. If this story gives you chills, hit that like button. If you want to see more tales of the underestimated coming back as legends, subscribe and turn on notifications. And comment Alpha Arya if you're already rooting for her. Now, let me tell you how a broken Omega became the most feared queen in the forest. The stone beneath Jet's hands crumbled like his authority, like his pack, like everything he'd spent 30 years building. He gripped the balcony railing and stared out at frostbite territory, watching it die in real time. At 52, Alpha King Jet looked 70. His hair had surrendered to silver. Deep lines carved his face into a map of poor decisions, and the weight loss hung on him like borrowed clothes. Below in the compound, wolves moved with the mechanical lethargy of the starving. No playful sparring among the young warriors. No laughter from the children, just careful movements conserving energy they couldn't afford to waste. The hunting party that had left at dawn limped back empty-handed, heads low, eyes hollow. 3rd week in a row, the pattern had burned itself into his consciousness like a brand. The prey animals were gone. Not scarce, gone, as if some divine hand had reached down and erased them. The deer that once moved through the forest in great herds had vanished. The rabbits that used to be so common the youngest pups practiced hunting them disappeared. Even the fish that filled their rivers had abandoned them, leaving only sluggish, murky water that tasted of rot and decay. The elders are calling for a council meeting." Sela's voice cut through his thoughts like a blade through silk. She moved beside him with predatory grace, still beautiful in that sharp, cold way that had first caught his attention decades ago. Her blonde hair was swept back from a face that showed none of the wear ravaging his own. Ice-blue eyes missed nothing, calculated everything. "They want answers, Jet." "I don't have answers." His voice came out rougher than intended, scraped raw by too many speeches to desperate wolves. "The game is gone. The fish are gone. It's as if the forest itself has turned against us." "I don't have answers." His voice came out rougher than intended, scraped raw by too many speeches to desperate wolves. "The game is gone. The fish are gone. And it's as if the forest itself has turned against us." Something flickered across Sela's face, too quick to name, too deliberate to be accidental. "Perhaps it has," she said, her tone carrying an edge he couldn't quite identify. "Perhaps it remembers." Before he could ask what she meant, the summons came. The council was gathering. Inside the great hall, the pack's leaders assembled with grim determination. The hall that had once hosted celebrations and ceremonies now felt cavernous and cold, the spaces between wolves too wide, the silence too heavy. Jet took his place at the head of the ancient stone table, Sela standing at his right hand like she always had. The elders spoke first, voices carrying the weight of decades. They spoke of omens and curses, of old stories about packs that had angered the forest spirits. Yeah, their words painted nightmares in the air. The younger wolves, hungry, frustrated, desperate, demanded action. They didn't want stories. They wanted solutions. Marcus stood to deliver his report. Jet's beta for 20 years, the grizzled warrior bore his scars like medals, including the missing ear he'd lost defending their northern border. Even Marcus, who'd faced down rival packs without flinching, looked shaken now. "Alpha," Marcus began, voice steady, despite the tremor in his jaw. The scouts confirmed what we feared. The game isn't just scarce, it's gone. Every animal that once lived in our territory has migrated away. They're avoiding us deliberately." "That's impossible," Jet said, but the words came out weak, unconvincing even to his own ears. Marcus met his eyes. "There's more. Well, the tracks, all of them, lead in the same direction." He paused, and silence pressed down like a physical weight. Toward the forbidden woods, everything that fled our lands went there. The temperature in the hall seemed to drop 10 degrees. For 3 generations, the forbidden woods had been exactly what their name suggested. Forbidden, taboo, off-limits, territory of the shadow walkers, the feral wolves who'd rejected civilization and supposedly devolved into mindless beasts. Stories told to frighten pups spoke of shadow walkers devouring anything that crossed into their domain, hanging bodies from trees as warnings. An elder rose, old Mara, her fur more white than gray, body bent by age, but mind sharp as winter ice. "Alpha King," she said, voice unwavering. "We face extinction. Our children are starving. The weak grow weaker. Soon, the strong will follow." She drew a breath that rattled in her chest. "We must do the unthinkable. We must petition the shadow walkers for aid." Jet felt the blood drain from his face. Beside him, Sela went rigid, her fingers curling into claws against the stone table. "You can't be serious," Sela hissed, her composure cracking just enough to let venom leak through. "Those monsters would slaughter our messengers and hang their bodies from the trees as decoration." "Then we send someone expendable," another elder suggested, with the casual cruelty of someone making tactical decisions. "Someone whose loss we can afford." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jet looked around the table at the faces of his council, some horrified, others calculating, all of them desperate. This was what they'd become. And this was what starvation did to a pack. It stripped away honor and left only survival. "I'll go." Marcus's voice cut through the murmuring. "I'm the beta. If anyone makes this petition, it should be me." Jet felt the blood drain from his face. Beside him, Sela went rigid, her fingers curling into claws against the stone table. "You can't be serious," Sela hissed, composure cracking just enough to let venom leak through. "Those monsters would slaughter our messengers and hang their bodies from the trees as decoration." "Then we send someone expendable," another elder suggested, with the casual cruelty of tactical decisions. "Someone whose loss we can afford." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jet looked around the table at faces of his council, some horrified, others calculating, all desperate. This was what they'd become. What starvation did to a pack. Stripped away honor and left only survival. "I'll go." Marcus's voice cut through the murmuring. "I'm the beta. If anyone makes this petition, it should be me." The meeting dissolved into arguments about protocol and strategy, about what to offer and how to approach creatures they'd spent generations treating as monsters. They decided on the basics. Marcus would go at dawn with a white flag and an offer of trade, territory for food, alliance for survival. It was surrender dressed up as negotiation, and everyone in the room knew it. As the council dispersed, Jet pulled Marcus aside in the shadowed alcove near the hall's entrance. Up close, he could see how thin his beta had become, how hunger had hollowed him from the inside. "If they kill you," Jet said quietly, unable to meet his oldest friend's eyes. "Oh, it's a mercy compared to watching our children waste away." Marcus nodded grimly. They stood together in silence, 2 warriors facing a battle they couldn't win with claws and teeth. Neither man mentioned the bitter irony bleeding through every word they'd spoken tonight, begging help from the same creatures they'd demonized for centuries, the same monsters they'd used as threats to keep pups in line. That night, sleep came for Jet like an unwelcome guest. He dreamed in fragments and flashes, memories rising from depths he'd spent years trying to bury. A young girl with tangled dark hair and tear-streaked face, the sound of shovels biting into earth, the smell of fresh-turned dirt mixed with rain. And beneath it all, a voice, small, breaking, desperate, screaming his name as the ground swallowed her whole. He woke in darkness. Scylla's breathing steady beside him and pressed his palms against his eyes until colors bloomed behind his lids. The dream was just a dream. The girl was just a memory. The past was buried where it belonged. But in the silence before dawn, listening to the empty wind whistle through his dying territory, Jet couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming back. Something that should have stayed dead. Something that remembered every shovel of dirt, every moment of her terror, every second of her screams that he'd ignored. The forest had turned against them, Marcus said. Perhaps Scylla was right. Perhaps it did remember. Marcus reached the edge of the forbidden woods as the sun broke over the eastern mountains, painting the sky blood and gold. The white flag tied to his spear snapped in the wind, a symbol of peace that felt more like surrender. He'd volunteered for this mission knowing it might be his last, but standing here now, his certainty wavered. The forest looked wrong, not dangerous like a rival pack's territory, but wrong in a deeper sense. Trees twisted into shapes that seemed almost deliberate, branches reaching toward each other like interlocking fingers. Mist coiled between gnarled roots, moving against the wind. The air itself felt heavier, charged with predatory awareness that raised every hair on Marcus's neck. He'd been a warrior for 40 years, had faced down rogues and rival alphas, but this place made his wolf instinct scream, "Danger! Run!" Marcus planted the white flag where the normal world ended. Then, as custom dictated, and he dropped to one knee and bared his throat to the forest. "I come seeking parley," his voice echoed strangely. "The Frostbite Pack requests audience with the Shadow Walkers." Silence answered. Not peaceful quiet, but predatory silence. Marcus's heart hammered. Then, movement. Eyes bloomed in the shadows like crimson stars. Dozens of them. Marcus's wolf instincts shrieked, demanding he run, shift, fight. But he forced himself still, throat bared, posture submissive. Running meant death. The eyes moved closer. Wolves emerged from the mist, massive, easily twice the size of any pack wolf. Their fur was so black it seemed to absorb light. They moved with eerie synchronization, circling him slowly. Marcus swallowed hard. "I bring a message from Alpha King Jet," he continued, fighting for steadiness. "Our pack is dying. The game has fled our territory. We come seeking trade, land for food, alliance for survival." A growl rippled through the circle, all of them, synchronized. The sound vibrated in Marcus's chest, deep enough to rattle his bones. Then the wolves parted. A figure walked through the gap, and Marcus's breath caught. She moved like pure predator, fluid, purposeful, absolutely confident. Tall, wrapped in black leather and wolf fur. An elaborate crown of bone and antler framed her face. Her eyes burned with an intensity that made him want to look away and never stop looking simultaneously. She stopped 10 feet from him. When she spoke, her voice was low, controlled, dangerous. "Marcus, you've grown old." He blinked, confusion cutting through his fear. "You know my name?" "I know all your names." She tilted her head. And something predatory moved in that gesture, something wolf even in human form. "You were there, the night they buried me." The world tilted. Marcus's mind raced. Then memory hit like a physical blow. A young girl with tangled dark hair, a hole in the ground, her screams muffled by earth. The small Omega child with the wrong scent, the one they'd buried a decade ago. "Arya?" The name came out as a whisper. "Queen Arya." She corrected him sharply. The massive wolves dropped to their bellies in perfect synchronization. "Of the Shadow Walker Pack, the monsters you so desperately need help from." Marcus's mouth opened, closed. She was supposed to be dead. "You survived," he finally managed. "How did you—" "Survived?" Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "I did more than survive, Marcus. I thrived. The pack you left me to die among raised me, fed me. I trained me, made me their queen." She stepped closer, and Marcus's wolf whimpered, recognizing something ancient, powerful. "And now the Alpha King who ordered my death sends you to beg mercy from the girl he threw away." She walked closer still. Marcus could see the scars on her neck, faint white lines where dirt had choked her, the way she moved, balanced between human grace and wolf power. She still had that scent they'd called broken, human, light, wrong. But underneath it, something primal and ancient that made his wolf bow internally. She knelt to his level, bringing them eye to eye. Her proximity was overwhelming. "Tell Jet," she said softly, and somehow that soft voice was more terrifying than any shout, "that I will come, not because I owe him mercy, May, but because I'm curious to see what kind of man buries a child and then expects her to save him." She stood in one fluid motion, the massive wolves rising with her. 3 days. At the border stone. He will come alone, unarmed, and he will kneel. If he cannot humble himself before the girl he tried to kill, his pack can join me in the grave he dug. She turned toward the woods, wolves falling into formation around her. Just before the mist swallowed her, she called back, "And Marcus, wash the blood from your hands before you touch your grandchildren. Some stains never come out." Marcus looked down at his palms. Clean, weathered and scarred, but clean, yet memory flooded back with crystalline clarity, his hands gripping the shovel, the weight of earth, the muffled screaming, the dirt falling until the screaming stopped. He'd been one of the men who buried her alive, and now she is coming back. Marcus returned to Frostbite Keep at dusk, and the words that fell from his lips shattered everything. The Omega they'd buried was alive. She ruled the Shadow Walkers. She wore a crown of bone, and she was coming. The pack erupted. In the great hall, voices rose in disbelief and fear. Some saw opportunity, others saw vindication. They'd been right to fear her all along. Marcus stood before them and repeated what he'd witnessed, voice hollow, eyes haunted. Jet sat on his throne and felt the ground crumbling beneath him. Sela went pale when Marcus spoke Arya's name. Her fingers curled into the armrest, knuckles white, but she said nothing. When the meeting dissolved into shouting, she retreated to her chambers without a word. 3 days. That's all he had before she came to the border stone. Jet wandered his keep like a ghost. He remembered Arya as she'd been, small, timid, with 2 bright eyes and that unsettling scent. He remembered Sela's whispers night after night, curses, bloodline corruption, ancient texts speaking of doom. He remembered standing over that filled-in grave, feeling relief. A problem solved. He'd never imagined she'd claw her way out. On the 3rd day, Jet woke before dawn. No ceremonial robes, no symbols of rank, just simple leather and the weight of his mistakes. He walked alone to the border stone, the ancient marker that separated Frostbite territory from the Forbidden Woods. No weapons, no guards. This meeting would be Alpha to Alpha, though the title meant nothing anymore. The mist rolled thick. Jet stood before the border stone and waited, and his wolf pacing inside him. Then, movement. They emerged like nightmares taking form. Shadow walkers, enormous, eyes glowing crimson, moving in perfect synchronization, dozens of them. Jet's wolf screamed to run, but he forced himself to stand firm. Then she appeared. Arya walked between the massive wolves like a queen among knights, taller than he remembered, face matured from child to woman, but unmistakably her. The bone crown, the layered armor, the fur mantle, and that scent, still wrong, still human. But underneath it now, raw power that made Jet's wolf want to submit. She stopped 20 feet away. They regarded each other in silence. "Kneel," she said. A command. Jet's pride warred with his desperation. He was an Alpha King. He'd never knelt to anyone, but his pack was dying. His grandchildren were starving. Slowly, as joints protesting, he lowered himself to one knee. Both knees, Arya said coldly. He complied, and there, kneeling in the dirt, he finally understood what he'd done to her. The humiliation, the helplessness. Good, Arya said. She walked closer, her escorts flanking her. Now, tell me why I should save the pack that tried to kill me. Jet opened his mouth. No words came. Arya circled him slowly. 10 years ago, you stood over my grave and felt nothing. Now you kneel in the dirt and feel everything. Poetic, isn't it? Arya. Queen Arya, she corrected sharply. You lost the right to familiarity when you buried me. Queen Arya. His voice cracked. I was wrong. I was frightened and foolish, and I condemned an innocent child. If I could take it back. But you can't. She stopped before him. Oh, so what you're really asking is, will I be better than you? Will I show mercy when you showed none? Jet met her eyes. No forgiveness there, only cold calculation. My pack is dying, he whispered. Our children are starving. If there's any decency in you. Decency? Her laugh was bitter. You want to lecture me about decency? You, who ordered a child buried alive because her scent offended you? It wasn't... Jet stopped. There was no defense. Please, punish me. Exile me. Kill me if you must. But save them. They didn't all choose this. Didn't they? Arya gestured toward the forest. They all stood in that circle. They all watched. Not one spoke against you. Queen Arya, please. Silence stretched between them. Then, I will come to Frostbite Keep. I will hear your pack's petition, and I will decide if any of you deserve to live. She turned to leave, but Jet called out, Why? If you hate us, and you have every right to, why even consider helping? Arya paused. When she looked back, something flickered in her eyes. Not quite sympathy, but not entirely cruelty either. Because I remember what it felt like to be helpless, to beg for mercy and receive none. Her voice softened slightly, and I'm still deciding if I want to be like you, or better than you. She disappeared into the mist, and Jet remained kneeling, feeling the weight of every choice that had brought him here. The past had teeth, and it was coming home. 10 years ago, Arya woke to darkness and grave dirt in her mouth. Her lungs burned, her body screamed, but she was breathing, impossibly breathing. Cold stone lay beneath her instead of suffocating soil. She tried to move and sobbed. Her fingers were bloody ruins, nails torn off from clawing at earth. Her throat felt shredded from screaming, every inch of skin scraped raw. She should be dead. Strange blue mushrooms cast ghostly light along cave walls. A massive shape moved in the shadows. Arya tried to scream. Only a wheeze emerged. The shape came closer, enormous, dark. The largest wolf she'd ever seen. Black as midnight, eyes glowing crimson. 3 times the size of any pack wolf. It should have terrified her. Instead, it moved with careful gentleness, nudging her shoulder with its nose. Breathe, little one. You're safe. The voice resonated in her mind. Rough, ancient, telepathy, rare, reserved for alpha bonds. Who? We are shadow walkers, the pack your kind called monsters. The great wolf settled beside her, his warmth seeping into her cold body. We felt you dying in the earth. We could not let the first blood perish. First blood? You will understand. Rest now. Heal. Then we teach you what you are. Present day. Arya stood before the gathered Shadow Walker pack in their hidden grotto. 50 massive wolves filled the cavern, her family, her army. They waited for her decision. Vayne stood beside her in human form, scarred, powerfully built, silver-streaked black hair and crimson eyes. He'd been the first to dig her out. My queen, Vayne said quietly. We don't need them. We've survived alone for centuries. Survived isn't the same as thrived, Arya replied. She looked at her pack, 50 strong, but still only 50. The humans expand every year. Soon, even the forbidden woods won't be enough. We need numbers. They need our strength. Kessa, the pack's shaman, shifted to human form. White hair, wiry body. The frostbite wolves fear us. Fear makes for unstable alliances. Then we teach them not to fear, Arya said. Or we teach them that fearing us is the least of their concerns. The pack rumbled with approval. Arya made her decision. She would go to Frostbite Keep as a conqueror offering mercy. Accept her terms, and the packs merge under her leadership. Refuse, and the Shadow Walkers take what they need while the Frostbite pack starves. 10 years ago, weeks passed. Young Arya healed under the Shadow Walkers' care. They fed her from their kills, taught her their language, wolf speak, telepathy, and ancient words predating modern packs. And slowly, they revealed the truth. Arya sat with Kessa beside the blue glowing mushrooms. "You aren't broken," Kessa said firmly. "You carry the bloodline of the first wolves, the original pack from which all shifters descended. Your human scent is the scent of the first ones, who walked equally in both forms before the bloodlines split. Why doesn't anyone know this? Because the first ones were too powerful," Kessa explained. "Their descendants feared that power. They wrote new histories, called the first ones myths, and when a child was born carrying that ancient blood," she touched Arya's cheek, "they called them broken. But I don't feel powerful. You died and came back different," Kessa corrected. "Now you get to choose who you become." Over the months that followed, Arya learned what it meant to be first blood. The Shadow Walkers had been waiting for generations for the bloodline to reawaken. They'd chosen to live as monsters, protecting this secret, and preserving the old ways, waiting for someone worthy to lead them. They'd been waiting for her. The knowledge felt like purpose, like finally understanding why she'd survived, why these monsters had risked everything to save one small girl. She wasn't broken. She never had been. Present day. "When do we leave?" Vane asked. "Tomorrow at dawn. We bring 12, enough to show strength, not so many they feel invaded." "And if they refuse your terms?" Arya's expression hardened. "Then I let them remember what it feels like to be buried alive, slowly, while we walk away and let the earth take them as it nearly took me." Kessa placed a hand on Arya's arm. "Don't let the girl who died in that grave make your decisions. Let the queen who rose from it choose." Arya met the old shaman's eyes. Kessa knew the war inside her, the part wanting revenge and the part wanting to be better. "I'm still deciding which one I am," Arya admitted. "Then perhaps," Kessa said, "it's time to find out." Arya arrived at Frostbite Keep at noon, when the sun blazed highest and shadows had nowhere to hide. She'd chosen the time deliberately. Let them see her clearly, exactly what they'd tried to bury, exactly what had clawed back to life, exactly what now held their survival in her scarred hands. 12 Shadow Walkers accompanied her, the smallest of her pack, though small was relative when even the shortest stood shoulder height to a grown man in wolf form. Their dark fur absorbed sunlight like holes cut in reality. Vane walked at her right hand, his presence a silent promise of violence. At her left paced Ash and Ember, her personal guards, massive dire wolves with crimson eyes scanning for threats with predatory intensity. The Frostbite pack lined the path. Arya felt their stares like physical touches, heard their whispered reactions carried on the wind. Awe, horror, fear. Children pressed against their parents, eyes wide with the kind of terror reserved for nightmares made flesh. Warriors gripped weapons they'd been ordered not to bring, knuckles white on spear shafts. Wolves who'd stood silent while she was buried now couldn't look away from what she'd become. Through it all, Arya walked with her head high, her bone crown catching sunlight, every inch a queen. Every step a reminder that she'd survived what should have killed her. The great hall doors stood open like a mouth waiting to swallow her. Arya didn't hesitate. She'd been swallowed by Earth once before. This time, she walked in with teeth of her own. Inside, Jet sat on his throne, looking smaller than she remembered. Age had worn him down, but shame had done more damage than years ever could. Sela stood beside him, her ice-blue eyes tracking Arya's approach with barely concealed panic. For the first time since that night, Arya saw real fear in the woman's face. Good. The hall filled with elders and important families pressed against the walls to give the Shadow Walkers room. Arya's escort fanned out behind her in a semicircle of dark fur and red eyes. The message was clear. She didn't come begging. She came offering terms. "Queen Arya," Jet began formally, "the Frostbite Pack welcomes you." "Do they?" Arya's voice carried to every corner, rich with challenge. "Because the last time I was here they were quite eager to be rid of me." Uncomfortable silence rippled through the room. Wolves shifted their weight, unable to meet her eyes. Then old Mara stood. "That was a mistake. We thought you were cursed." "You thought I was different," Arya corrected, walking slowly down the aisle. Her footsteps echoed on stone. "And difference frightened you, so you tried to kill it. Kill me." She let her gaze sweep across faces both familiar and strange. "Tell me, how many others have you purified over the years? How many children with unusual sense, with strange gifts, with anything that didn't fit your narrow definition of acceptable?" No one answered, but she saw the truth in their downcast eyes, their rigid shoulders. There had been others, maybe not buried alive, but cast out, exiled, disappeared. Just the silence was damning. Arya reached the throne and stopped, standing level with Jet, even though he sat elevated. Somehow, she still seemed to look down on him. "Here is my offer. One chance. No negotiation. Your pack joins mine. Not as subjects, but as equals. The Shadow Walkers and Frostbite Wolves become one pack. We teach you the old ways. You teach us your community structure. Together, we build something stronger." "And if we refuse?" Sela's voice cut sharp with panic. Arya turned to her slowly. "Then I leave, and you starve. I'll take the Shadow Walkers north. We'll thrive. And in a few years, when hunters find these ruins, I'll make sure they spell your names correctly on the monument." The hall erupted. Some wolves shouted agreement. Others protested. Still others demanded clarification. Jet raised his hand for silence. What are your specific terms?" "First, no more purification rituals. No more condemning children for being different. Every wolf born into this combined pack is protected regardless of scent, size, or gifts." "Agreed," Jet said quickly. "Second, Jet steps down as Alpha King. I rule as sole Alpha. He remains as advisor, a position of honor but not absolute power." Jet's face drained of color. For 30 years he'd been Alpha King. Slowly, painfully, he nodded. "Agreed." "Third," Arya's gaze fixed on Sela, "the pack's true history will be revealed. Every manipulation, every lie, every conspiracy, and those responsible will face judgment." Sela went rigid. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything." Arya's smile was cold. "I'm stating fact, and we'll get to that soon enough." She turned back to the assembled pack. "Ma, you have until tomorrow at dawn to decide. Unity or extinction. Those are your choices." Arya turned toward the exit, her escort moving to follow. "Wait!" A young voice. Arya stopped. A girl pushed through the crowd, perhaps 16, thin from hunger, with unusual golden eyes. Different. Like Arya had been. "Queen Arya, I'm sorry for what they did to you. Some of us," she glanced around nervously, "some of us don't want to be like our parents. We want to be better." Arya studied her. The girl met her eyes despite her obvious fear. Courage. "What's your name?" "Lyra." "Well, Lyra, if your pack chooses unity, I promise you this. You'll never have to apologize for what you are, whatever that is." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, unable to speak. As Arya exited with her escort, Vane leaned close. "That was well played." "Offering hope to the young ones." "It wasn't played," Arya said quietly. "I meant it. If we do this, it has to be real change, not just revenge dressed up as justice." "And what about Sela?" Vane asked. "She knows you know. She won't go quietly." "No." Arya's jaw tightened, her hand touching the scars on her neck. "She won't. But that's tomorrow's problem." Behind them, the great hall dissolved into heated arguments. Their choices had narrowed to two paths, and both required change. Arya stepped into sunlight and breathed deeply. Perhaps if this worked, she could bring wildness back to these broken wolves. Teach them that different didn't mean broken. Teach them what the Shadow Walkers had taught her, that sometimes you had to die to discover what you truly were. 12 years ago. Sela found the text in the deepest part of the pack's archives, where dust gathered thick as snow, and the air tasted of forgotten things. She'd been searching for anything to secure her position as Jet's newly bonded mate. She was still establishing her place in the hierarchy, and the other females watched her with calculating eyes. Power was fragile. Power could slip away if you weren't careful. The text was ancient, written in the old tongue few still bothered to learn. But Sela had always been thorough. She'd learned the old ways specifically for moments like this, to find knowledge others had overlooked. It spoke of the first wolves, original shifters from whom all packs descended. It described a specific trait. Rarely, perhaps once every few generations, as a child would be born with the ancient bloodline fully reactivated, marked by a human scent and wolf form. Such children carried power that transcended normal alpha strength. They could unite packs, command the wildest wolves, reshape the very nature of shifter society. Sela closed the book slowly, mind racing. This was dangerous knowledge, the kind that could elevate someone, or destroy them. Present. Arya stood in the shadow of the forbidden woods with Kessa, far from where anyone could overhear. "I've scried the past," Kessa said. "Used the old sight to see what truly happened." "I know what happened," Arya said tightly. "I was there." "You know what you experienced, not why." Kessa touched Arya's temple. "Let me show you." The vision hit like a blow. 12 years ago, 1 year after finding the text, Inasila witnessed the birth of Arya to mid-ranking pack member Thera. The child was small, perfect, with dark hair and 2 bright eyes, and that scent, human, light, wrong for a wolf pup. The other wolves exchanged confused glances. Thera looked terrified. Sela felt ice spread through her chest. The mark of the first wolves. Arya carried the ancient bloodline. Over the years, Sela watched the girl grow. Most dismissed the scent as a genetic quirk, but Sela knew better. If Arya's power awakened, she could challenge any alpha, even Jet. Worse, if Jet discovered the truth, he might protect her, elevate her, possibly name her his heir. Sela couldn't allow it. She began carefully, planting seeds of doubt, whispered to Jet at night about ancient curses, about bloodline corruption, and found obscure texts, half forgotten in dusty corners, and edited them with careful precision. Where they mentioned first wolves with reverence, she changed the words to speak of broken omegas who brought doom to their packs. She showed these edited texts to the elders, spoke in concerned tones about the child with the strange scent. What if it was contagious? What if it spread to other pups? What if Arya's presence was poisoning the pack's bloodline? The elders, already uncomfortable with anything different, listened. Fear was easy to cultivate when you knew which doubts to plant. By the time Arya reached 13, her scent still unchanged, Sela had laid the groundwork perfectly. "The girl must be purified," she told Jet one night, voice heavy with false sorrow, "before her curse spreads to others." "Well, the texts are clear. Such abominations must be eliminated for the pack's survival." Jet, worn down by years of subtle manipulation and genuinely frightened for his pack, agreed. Present. The vision released Arya. Kessa steadied her. "She knew," Arya breathed. "She knew what I was and tried to kill me before I could become it." "More than that," Kessa said grimly. "She condemned you knowing the Shadow Walkers might save you. She just didn't expect you to survive and thrive. She gambled you'd die anyway. She never imagined you'd return." Arya's hands trembled with rage. All these years, she'd thought Jet was her enemy, but he was just a coward, manipulated by someone more cunning. "What will you do?" Kessa asked. Arya's jaw set. "Expose her. Tomorrow, in front of everyone. And then I'll let the pack decide her fate." Judgment rather than revenge? Judgment is revenge, but it serves a purpose. If I kill her, she becomes a martyr. If I expose her, she becomes a warning. 12 years ago, the day after Arya's burial, Jet woke before dawn with guilt crushing his chest like a physical weight. He told himself he'd done what was necessary. The girl was cursed. Her death protected the pack. But the memory of her screams, muffled by earth, haunted him. He found himself walking to the burial site, compelled by something he couldn't name. The sun rose behind him as he stood over the disturbed ground. The grave had been dug open. Jet's heart stopped. Massive paw prints surrounded the site. Shadow Walker tracks, unmistakable in their size. They'd taken her. The monsters had claimed her body. He should investigate, should follow the tracks into the woods, confirm what happened. The tracks led clearly toward the Forbidden Woods, but fear paralyzed him. Fear of the Shadow Walkers and what they might do if he trespassed. Fear of what he might discover if he looked too closely at his own actions. Shame burned in his chest. Jet turned away and walked back to the keep. He found Sela in their chambers, brushing her golden hair with languid strokes. "It's dealt with," he said flatly. "The Shadow Walkers took her. She's gone." Sela met his eyes in the mirror. For just a moment, satisfaction flashed across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by appropriate sorrow. "A mercy, perhaps," Sela said softly, "that she didn't suffer long." Jet nodded, wanting to believe it, needing to believe it. They never spoke of Arya again. The pack moved on. Life continued. Years passed, and Sela slept soundly, confident her secret was safe in the ground with the child who'd threatened her position. At present, Arya stood beneath the stars, Kessa silent beside her, feeling the full weight of truth settling over her shoulders. Jet had ordered her death, yes, but Sela had orchestrated it, twisted him, manipulated him, used his fear against him. Sela had known exactly what Arya was and tried to kill that potential before it could bloom. The old rage was still there, hot and hungry. But beneath it now, something colder, more focused. Tomorrow she would expose every lie, every manipulation. She would let the Frostbite pack see that their traditions, their fear of difference, had been cultivated by someone seeking power. Then she would let them choose. Unity or extinction, truth or comfortable lies. "Get some rest," Kessa said. "Tomorrow will be difficult." "Tomorrow," Arya said quietly, "will be justice." She walked back toward the Shadow Walker camp, mind already planning the confrontation. Sela had orchestrated her burial. Now Arya would orchestrate Sela's downfall, and this time no one would be able to claw their way back. Dawn broke over Frostbite Keep like a verdict waiting to be read. The entire pack had gathered before the Great Hall, faces etched with exhaustion from a night of heated debate. Some saw Arya's offer as salvation. Others saw subjugation, the death of tradition. The traditionalists argued that accepting an Omega as Alpha violated everything they believed. The progressives countered that their beliefs were killing them. Now, as pale light spread across the assembled wolves, they waited. Arya arrived with the full Shadow Walker pack behind her, and all 50 in their massive wolf forms emerged from the tree line, dark fur absorbing light, crimson eyes glowing. Vayne and her lieutenants walked in human form. The show of force was deliberate. This is what unity looks like. This is what power looks like. Arya took her place at the center, Vayne at her right, Ash and Ember flanking her. She wore her bone crown and wolf fur mantle, every inch the queen she'd become. Jet stepped forward. I have consulted with the elders and with my heart. Queen Arya's terms are harsh but fair. I recommend we accept." "You just want to save your own hide," Darius, a senior warrior, called out. "I want to save all our hides," Jet retorted. "My mistakes brought us here. Her mercy can lead us out." The debate erupted. Voices rose, wolves snarling, old grievances surfacing. Then Lyra stepped forward, our golden eyes blazing. "I'm going with her, whether the pack agrees or not. I'd rather be an equal among the Shadow Walkers than starve with people who think being different is a death sentence." Her declaration rippled outward. Another young wolf stepped forward, then another, a mother with children, an elder. Within minutes, the majority wanted unity, but not everyone. Seela stepped forward, her blonde hair catching the morning light, her face a mask of desperate concern. "We're making a mistake!" Her voice rang with false worry, perfectly calculated. "This girl, this Omega, is manipulating you. She brings monsters to our door and calls it salvation." "These monsters," Arya said calmly, her voice cutting through Seela's hysteria like a blade through silk, "dug me out of the grave you put me in. Tell me, Seela, which of us is the real monster?" Seela's eyes flashed with rage she couldn't quite conceal. "You were broken. You would have corrupted the bloodline." "There it is," Arya said softly, then louder, her voice carrying to every corner of the clearing. "There's the truth. Tell them, Seela. Tell them why you really wanted me dead." Kessa stepped forward carrying old texts in worn leather. "These are the originals," she announced. "The texts about the first wolves, the original shifters. Children born with the ancient bloodline reactivated, marked by a human scent. Children who carry power that transcends normal alpha strength." She read aloud in the old tongue, describing the first wolves, the original power. "Seela knew," Arya announced. "She found these texts 12 years ago. She knew I wasn't broken. She knew I carried ancient alpha blood, and she ordered my death not to protect the pack, but to protect her position." Jet turned to his mate, horror dawning across his face like a terrible sunrise. "Seela?" "It was necessary," Seela snapped, her composure finally cracking like ice under pressure. "If she had awakened, she would have challenged you, destroyed everything we built." "We built?" Jet's voice was hollow, empty of everything except betrayal. "You manipulated me into burying a child to eliminate a rival? For us, for our family, for our power." Seela's voice rose to a shriek. "I did what I had to do to protect what was ours." The pack recoiled. Even those who'd opposed Arya's rule looked disgusted. You didn't condemn children for political gain. You didn't manipulate your alpha into murdering innocents. And Seela had crossed every line. Arya let the moment settle. The pack has a choice, not just about unity, but about justice. Seela orchestrated my attempted murder. She manipulated your alpha. She twisted your traditions. What should her punishment be? Old Mara stood. "Exile. Send her away as you were sent away." "Death," another voice called. "She deserves no mercy." Arya raised her hand for silence. "I could kill her. Easily. Part of me wants to. But I'm not you. I won't let my fear make me cruel." She turned to Jet. "She's your mate. Your choice." Jet looked at Seela, really looked at her. Saw not the woman he thought he loved, but the manipulator who'd used him. "Exile," he said finally. "Banish her from these lands. Let her wander alone and understand what loneliness truly means." Seela's face contorted with rage. You can't." "We can," Arya said. "And we will. You have until sunset to leave. If you're still here when darkness falls, the Shadow Walkers will hunt you." Warriors gripped Seela's arms. She screamed curses and promises of revenge as they dragged her away. Jet turned to Arya. "You showed her mercy when you owed her none." "I showed her consequence," Arya corrected. "Mercy would be forgiveness. This is choosing to be better than the people who hurt me." She faced the assembled pack. "Now, unity or extinction? Who chooses life?" Lyra's hand shot up first, then dozens more. The vote was overwhelming. Jet stepped forward and removed the Alpha King's ceremonial necklace, heavy silver and stone. He held it, then let it fall. I formally stepped down as Alpha King. I pledge my loyalty to Queen Arya, a first alpha of the combined pack. Arya picked up the necklace and handed it to Vayne. Melt this down. Make something new that honors both our histories. She turned to all the wolves. We are no longer two packs. We are Shadowfrost, honoring the wildness that saved me and the community that created you. We honor strength in all its forms. We protect our different ones. We build something new. The Shadowwalkers howled first. Then the Frostbite wolves joined them. The sound echoed across the territory, announcing that something had changed. Something had been born. Arya stood at the center, feeling the weight of leadership settle onto her shoulders. She'd come back for revenge and found something harder, something better. The girl who'd died in the grave was gone forever, but the queen who'd risen from it had just begun. And the first month of unity was chaos dressed up as progress. Frostbite wolves and Shadowwalkers circled each other like predators, forced to share territory, all tense muscles and wary glances. The merger looked good on paper. Shadowfrost pack, united and strong. The reality was messier, uglier, more complicated than anyone anticipated. Arguments erupted over everything. Hunting territories that had belonged to Frostbite for generations suddenly had massive Shadowwalkers disrupting established patterns. Sleeping arrangements became territorial disputes. The Great Hall echoed with growls as two completely different social structures collided. The Shadowwalkers were used to might makes right. If you were strong enough to take something, it was yours. Simple, brutal, effective. The Frostbite wolves expected clear ranks and formal protocols, as every wolf had a place in the hierarchy established through years of careful observation. You didn't just challenge someone, you went through proper channels, made your case to elders, followed tradition. The two systems were oil and water, and Arya stood in the middle trying to make them mix. She worked from dawn until long past dark, Vayne always at her side, navigating the chaos with patience she didn't know she possessed. Some days she felt more mediator than queen, settling disputes that seemed petty until you realized they represented fundamental differences in worldview. Slowly, painfully, she established new traditions attempting to blend both cultures. Strength would be honored, the Shadowwalker way, but so would wisdom, which the Frostbite wolves valued. Hierarchy would be fluid based on contribution to the pack, and not just combat ability. Pack members could challenge for position, but those challenges had to benefit the pack as a whole, not just feed individual ambition. Some wolves adapted quickly, others resisted stubbornly, and some outright rebelled. The incident with Dusk came 3 weeks into the merger. Dusk was young for a Shadowwalker, barely into his 20s, all raw power and minimal impulse control. He'd set his sights on a Frostbite female named Rhaena, who'd made clear she had no interest. When Marcus's son Chaol, a warrior who'd courted Rhaena properly through Frostbite customs, stepped between them, Dusk saw it as a challenge. The fight should have been stopped before it went too far. But it happened fast, during a hunting party, too far from the keep for anyone to intervene. By the time Vayne and Arya arrived, Chaol lay unconscious, and his leg twisted at an unnatural angle, his face a mask of blood. Dusk stood over him, breathing hard, hands still shifted into claws. He challenged me. I answered. "You nearly killed him," Arya said, her voice dangerously quiet. "He'll heal. We heal." "That's not the point." Arya looked at Dusk, at this young wolf raised in the Forbidden Woods, where fights to the death were common, where mercy was weakness. She saw herself reflected there, the rage, the certainty that strength solved everything, the inability to see beyond immediate confrontation. She saw what she could have become if Kessa hadn't taught her differently. "You're demoted," Arya announced. "Lowest rank, and you'll care for Chaol until he's healed. Bring him food, help him walk, sit with him through the pain. I'll learn what it costs to hurt someone unnecessarily." Dusk's eyes flashed red. "You can't." "I can. I am. And if you challenge me, you're exiled." Arya's voice carried absolute authority. "We're building something new. We don't break each other for sport." Dusk submitted, resentment palpable. Some shadow walkers muttered she was going soft. Some frostbite wolves whispered she was too harsh. Arya ignored them all. But there were victories too, small lights in the darkness of adjustment. Lyra discovered her gift during a hunting expedition combining shadow walkers and frostbite wolves. The party had been tracking a herd of elk for hours with no success. The elk seemed to sense them coming, always staying just out of reach. Frustration mounted, tempers flared. Then Lyra, standing very still at the edge of the tree line, began to hum. Not words exactly, but a sound that seemed to resonate with something beyond language. The elk stopped fleeing. One of the older females actually approached Lyra, close enough that Lyra could have touched her if she'd reached out. Lyra whispered something, later she couldn't remember what, and the elk led them to where the weaker members of the herd grazed. The hunt was successful. No one went hungry that night. "She can speak to them," Kessa said wonderingly when they returned. "Not control them, but communicate. Ask rather than take. It's a gift the old bloodlines carried. I haven't seen it in generations." The shadow walkers, who'd lived closer to the wild and understood the value of harmony with prey, immediately recognized Lyra's worth. The frostbite wolves, seeing tangible results, couldn't deny it. And she became a bridge between the two groups. Proof that different didn't mean broken, that unusual gifts had value beyond traditional measures. More hunting parties combined shadow walker strength with frostbite strategy, bringing in more food than either pack could manage alone. Children from both sides played together, inventing games that mixed shadow walker physicality with frostbite rules. Slowly, grudgingly, the pack started to work. Jet adapted unexpectedly. Stripped of absolute power, he found something like peace. He advised Arya honestly now, teaching her pack politics, which families had old alliances, which wolves held grudges, how to navigate the complex web of relationships. He was good at it. Without the pressure of being Alpha King, without Seela's poison, Jet was a decent counselor. One night, a month into the merger, Jet found Arya alone on the keep's balcony. "May I?" Jet gestured to the space beside her. Arya nodded, too tired to refuse. They stood in silence, looking out over Shadowfrost territory. "I'm sorry," Jet said finally. "Not just for what I did, but for being too weak to question it, too afraid to dig deeper, too cowardly to save you." Arya didn't look at him. "You were weak. You were a coward." "Yes. You let her manipulate you because it was easier than confronting uncomfortable truths." "Yes." "You stood over my grave and felt relief." "Yes." His voice cracked, "and I've had to live with that knowledge every day since." Arya turned to him, studying his face in the moonlight. There was honesty there now, the willingness to face what he'd done without justification. "I won't forgive you," Arya said clearly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. And what you did, those aren't things apologies can fix." Jet nodded. "But I'll work with you, because the pack needs both of us. They need your experience and my vision. They need us to be something better than what we were." "That's more than I deserve." "It's not about what you deserve. It's about what they need." It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was honest, and it was functional. "Thank you," Jet said. "Don't thank me. Just do better. Be better." He left her alone. Arya stood on the balcony until dawn colored the eastern sky. Below, the pack was waking. Shadow walkers and frostbite wolves emerging, moving through morning routines. Some still avoided each other. Some worked together awkwardly. A few seemed to have genuinely accepted this new reality. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And a start was all you needed to build something worth keeping. 3 months after Unity, the Shadowfrost pack was thriving in ways that defied Arya's expectations. The hunting was good, better than good. Shadow Walker instinct combined with frostbite strategy meant they brought down prey neither group could have taken alone. The territory was secure, borders strong enough that even the most ambitious rogues thought twice before testing them. And the children born in this new era knew no division between Shadow Walker and frostbite. They were simply pack. Everything seemed settled, fixed. Like maybe, impossibly, she'd actually pulled this off. Then Vane pulled her aside with a look that made her stomach tighten. "We need to talk about your bloodline," he said. And the gravity in his voice told her this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. They met with Kessa in the old shaman's quarters, deep in the keep where privacy was guaranteed. The room smelled of dried herbs and old smoke, walls lined with scrolls and texts Kessa had been studying since before Arya was born. The old woman looked troubled, not her usual serene wisdom, but something closer to worry. "I've been researching the first wolves," Kessa said without preamble. She spread ancient texts across the worn table, fingers tracing symbols that predated modern writing. "Specifically, your family line." Arya's chest tightened. "What did you find?" Kessa met her eyes. "Your grandmother carried the first wolf gene, but she died before it manifested. Car accident when she was 32. Oh, your mother carried it recessively. She showed no signs, passed as a normal wolf her entire life." She paused, weight building in the silence. "You're the first in 3 generations to be born with the bloodline fully activated." Arya nodded slowly. They'd known this. Kessa had explained it years ago. "But there's more," Kessa continued, and something in her tone made Arya go still. "The Shadow Walkers didn't just happen to find you. We've been watching your family for 70 years, waiting for the bloodline to reemerge." The words landed like stones. Arya felt them settle, heavy and cold. "You knew? All along?" "Not knew," Vane corrected gently, stepping closer. "Hoped. My great-grandmother was the Pack's shaman when your grandmother was born. She prophesied that within 3 generations, and a child would be born who could unite the lost Packs, a child who walked equally in both worlds, civilized and wild." Arya's hands gripped the table edge. "So I was always—" She struggled to process this, to understand what they were telling her. "I was always meant to be here? My burial, my suffering, it was all part of some destiny?" "No." Kessa's voice was firm, sharp enough to cut through Arya's spiraling thoughts. She moved around the table, gripped Arya's shoulders. "Your suffering was real. Seela's cruelty was real. What happened to you was evil, not fate. But what you did with that suffering, how you chose to respond, to grow, to lead, that's what fulfilled the prophecy, not the pain, the choice." Arya was silent for a long time, staring at the ancient texts without really seeing them. Outside, but she could hear the Pack moving through evening routines, children laughing, warriors training, the sounds of life continuing, while her understanding of her own history rearranged itself. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked finally. Vane and Kessa exchanged glances. Then Vane spoke, his voice carrying the weight of something bigger than just their pack, bigger than just their territory. "Because there are others," he said. "Other packs across the continent, other groups of shadow walkers in different territories, and with the human world expanding, we're all running out of space. Someone needs to unite us before we're extinct. That someone is you." Arya looked out the narrow window, thinking about what this meant. She'd come back for revenge and stayed for justice. She'd built one united pack from the ashes of 2 broken ones. As now they were asking her to think bigger. Not just one united pack, but many. A return to the old ways, adapted for a new world. "How many packs?" she asked. "At least 7 major territories," Vane said. "Maybe more. Some we know about. Some we've only heard rumors of. Shadow Walker groups living in the margins, hiding from civilization. Traditional packs trying to maintain old hierarchies while the world changes around them." "And they'll just accept me as their alpha?" "No," Kessa said bluntly. "You'll have to earn it, just like you did here." Arya laughed, sharp, exhausted, a sound that carried equal parts humor and horror. "So this was just the beginning?" "This was your origin story," Vane said, and something about the way he said it made it sound both smaller and larger than she'd imagined. "What comes next?" That's your legacy." Arya turned to face them fully. Vane, who dug her out of the grave and taught her to fight. Kessa, who'd shown her what she really was beneath the lies. They weren't asking permission. They were informing her of what they'd always believed she would become. 7 packs, she repeated, testing the words. 7 separate territories with 7 different alphas who won't want to submit to someone they've never met. 7 territories that are starving, Vane countered. 7 packs watching their lands shrink as humans expand. 7 groups of wolves who need exactly what you've built here: unity, strength, survival. You make it sound simple. It won't be, Kessa said. It'll be harder than anything you've done so far, but you've proven you can take broken pieces and forge them into something whole. That's what the continent needs. Arya walked to the window, pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Below, she saw Lyra teaching a group of children how to listen to the forest. Shadowwalker pups and frostbite pups sitting together, learning something neither group had valued before. She saw Marcus's son Kale sparring with Dusk, the 2 of them working in tandem now, their earlier violence transformed into partnership. She'd built this. From grave dirt and rage and impossible choices, she'd built something that worked. When? She asked without turning around. Spring, Vane said. After the thaw. We'll send scouts first, make contact with the nearest pack, see if they're willing to talk. And if they're not? Then we convince them, however we have to. Arya turned back to them. I'm not conquering anyone. I won't build an empire on the same fear and violence that nearly destroyed me. We know, Kessa said. That's why it has to be you. Someone else might take the easy path. Domination, subjugation, empire. But you understand the difference between unity and control. Do I? Arya asked. The question was genuine. Some nights, she still woke up tasting dirt, feeling the weight of earth crushing her chest. Some days, she looked at Jet and wanted to make him suffer like she'd suffered. The rage hadn't disappeared. It had just learned to wait. Yes, Vane said with absolute certainty, because you're still asking the question. Anyone who'd build an empire wouldn't bother. Silence settled over the room. Arya felt the weight of this new future pressing down, not just alpha of one pack, but potentially leader of many. Not just guardian of one territory, but architect of a new wolf society. The scope of it should have terrified her. Maybe it did. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Something that felt like purpose. I want to think about this, she said finally. I need time. Take what you need, Kessa said, but not too much. The other packs won't wait forever, and the humans expand every day. Arya left them there, walked out into the evening air. The keep was alive around her, wolves moving through communal spaces, conversations flowing in multiple languages, the blended culture they'd built humming with energy. She'd made this. She'd taken 2 broken pieces and forged something new. Could she do it 6 more times? She found herself walking to the edge of their territory, to the place where Shadowfrost land met the Forbidden Woods, at the boundary between what they'd built and what remained wild. She stood there until the stars came out, thinking about children yet unborn, packs yet unconvinced, futures yet unwritten. Lyra found her eventually, appearing quietly at her side. You're thinking loud, the young woman said. I can hear it from the keep. Arya smiled despite herself. That's not how telepathy works. Maybe, but I know that look. That's the my life just got impossibly complicated look. Perceptive. They stood in comfortable silence. Then Lyra asked, Are you leaving? No, but I might be traveling. A lot. To unite other packs? Arya looked at her sharply. How did you— Please. We all know this was just the beginning. You're too powerful, too different to stop at one pack. The question was never if you'd expand. It's when. Arya considered this. And how does the pack feel about that? Honestly, proud, scared, excited. The usual mix when your alpha is about to do something impossible. Lyra grinned. We're getting good at the impossible around here. Are we? Look around. 3 months ago, half of us wanted to kill the other half. Now we're teaching each other how to hunt, how to listen, how to be something neither group could have been alone. Lyra's golden eyes caught starlight. You did that. If you can do it once, why not 7 times? 7 times harder, Arya said. Maybe, or maybe it gets easier each time. Maybe the second pack sees what you built here and wants it too. Maybe by the 3rd and 4th, they're asking you to come instead of you having to convince them. Arya hadn't considered that. She'd been thinking in terms of conquest, or at least forceful persuasion. Oh, but Lyra was right. Their success was visible, tangible. Other packs would see it, talk about it, wonder if they could have it too. When did you get so wise? Arya asked. About the time I decided following a queen who rose from the grave was smarter than dying with people who feared difference. Lyra bumped her shoulder against Arya's. Plus, I've been listening to Kessa. That old wolf knows things. They stood together until the cold drove them back inside. Arya returned to her chambers, the Alpha's quarters that still sometimes felt too large, too formal, too much like the power structures she'd sworn to change. But she was learning to inhabit them, to make them her own. Vane was waiting when she arrived. You're going to do it, he said, not a question. Yes, but on my terms. We offer alliance, not domination. We show them what unity looks like, and if they refuse... She paused, considering. We leave them to their fate and move on. I won't force anyone into something they don't choose. Some won't choose wisely. Then they'll learn. Or they won't. But their mistakes aren't mine to fix. Vane nodded slowly. It's a good approach. Harder, but good. Everything worth doing is hard, Arya said. She moved to the window, looked out over her territory, shadow frost land stretching into darkness. I survived being buried alive. I learned to lead the pack that saved me. I united wolves who'd been enemies for generations. She turned to face him. 7 more packs? That's just the next impossible thing. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Vane smiled, rare for him, genuine. That's what makes you a queen, not certainty. A choice. He left her alone. Arya stood at the window until dawn began to color the eastern sky. Below, the pack was waking. Shadow walkers and frostbite wolves moving through morning routines that had become habit, ritual, normal. Children born in this era would never know the division that had defined their parents' lives. She'd given them that, and she would give it to others. The girl who'd been buried in shame had died in that grave. The queen who'd clawed her way out had united one pack. The legend who'd walk across the continent to unite them all? She was just getting started. Arya touched the scars on her neck, faint white lines, permanent reminders of what she'd survived. Then she turned from the window and began planning. 7 territories, 7 chances to build something that lasted. 7 opportunities to prove that different didn't mean broken, that unity was stronger than tradition, that the future could be better than the past. It would be hard. It would be dangerous. It would test everything she'd become. But she'd died once already. Everything after that was just life. 1 year later, Arya stood at the edge of the Forbidden Woods, looking out over thriving Shadowfrost territory. The border stone where Jet once knelt had been carved with new words, chiseled deep so they would last generations. Here, the broken became whole. Here, 2 packs became one. Here, the old ways were reborn. Behind her, the pack prepared for a journey. Representatives from another territory, the Crimson Ridge Pack, 300 miles north, had sent word that they were suffering similar problems to what Frostbite had faced. Starvation, division, desperation. They'd heard rumors of a united pack and wanted to know if it was true. Arya would take a delegation north to meet them, to offer them the same choice, unity or extinction. The year had changed her in ways she was still discovering. She'd grown into her power, learned to wield authority without cruelty, discovered that leadership meant carrying everyone's burdens while pretending they weighed nothing. Some days were harder than others. Some nights, she still woke tasting dirt. But most mornings, she woke to a pack that functioned, thrived, grew stronger with each passing season. Lyra approached, her golden eyes bright with excitement. She'd become one of Arya's most trusted advisors, despite her youth, her gift for communicating with prey animals proving invaluable. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," Arya admitted. And she'd learned that honesty with her inner circle mattered more than projection of strength. "I barely managed to unite 2 packs. How am I supposed to unite 7? "The same way you united this one," Lyra said, "by being exactly what they need, someone who's been broken and rebuilt herself." Vayne joined them, his scarred face unreadable as always. "The pack is ready when you are." Arya took a deep breath. She thought about the girl she was, powerless, frightened, thrown away like garbage. She thought about the rage that sustained her, the revenge she craved, and she thought about the choice she made, to be better than the people who hurt her, not because they deserved her mercy, but because she deserved to be more than her trauma. "Before we leave," Arya said, "there's something I need to do." She walked to the place where she was buried. Yet the exact spot wasn't hard to find. She'd marked it deliberately. Over the past year, the tree she planted there had grown with surprising speed, its roots deep in the same earth that once choked her. The sapling stood nearly 10 feet tall now, branches reaching toward sky like fingers clawing free from grave dirt. She knelt before it and spoke quietly, aware that Vayne and Lyra stayed back to give her privacy. "I thought I came back for revenge, to make them pay, to prove I wasn't broken." She touched the bark, felt the rough texture under her palm. "But I was broken. They did break me. The difference is, I chose how to put myself back together. I chose to build something better with the pieces." The tree swayed slightly in the morning breeze. Around her, the forest hummed with life, birds calling, small animals moving through undergrowth, and the eternal rhythm of predator and prey that had continued long before her burial and would continue long after she was dust. She'd wanted to hate this place, wanted to burn it down, salt the earth, erase every reminder of her suffering. But that would have been easy. What she'd done instead, transforming it into a symbol of growth from pain, that was harder. That mattered more. She stood and turned to her waiting pack. They'd gathered without her realizing it, drawn by some collective instinct. Shadow walkers and former frostbite wolves standing together, unified in ways that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago. Jet was there, older and humbled, but still useful, his knowledge of pack politics invaluable. Young wolves who'd never known division played together without seeing difference. And at the front, at her most trusted companions, Vayne, Kessa, Lyra, Marcus, and others who believed in her vision when it was just words and hope. "The pack that buried me taught me what I didn't want to be," Arya said to them, her voice carrying clear and strong. "The pack that raised me taught me what I could become, and all of you, together, are teaching me what we all should be." She looked toward the north, toward unknown territories and uncertain futures. There are more packs out there. More wolves who need to see that difference doesn't mean broken. That strength comes in many forms. That unity doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding something bigger to belong to. Kessa stepped forward, her white hair braided with feathers and bone beads. "Some will refuse, some will fight, some will see your offer as weakness." "I know," Arya said. And if they choose extinction over evolution, that's their choice. I won't force anyone. But I will offer everyone the chance to be part of something greater." She shifted into her wolf form, the transformation smooth now, practiced, natural, large and powerful, with dark fur that absorbed light like her Shadow Walker family, but carrying that distinctive scent that marked her as something ancient and new simultaneously, something that shouldn't exist according to modern wolf lore, but did anyway. Something broken that had become beautiful. When she howled, every wolf in the territory answered. The sound echoed across the forest and beyond, rolling over hills and through valleys, a promise carried on the wind that reached farther than any of them knew. The broken have risen, the buried have bloomed. When the age of the Shadowfrost is just beginning, they moved out at dawn, Arya at the front, 20 wolves behind her representing the best of both lineages. Vayne and Lyra flanked her. Kessa stayed behind to guard their territory with Jet and Marcus. The delegation would be gone weeks, possibly months, long enough to reach Crimson Ridge, assess their situation, offer alliance, and either return with new pack members or return alone. As they crossed into unclaimed territory, leaving Shadowfrost land behind, Arya felt the weight of what she carried. She was no longer just alpha of her own pack. She was becoming something else, a bridge between old and new, wild and civilized, isolated and united. The responsibility should have crushed her. Instead, it felt like purpose settling into her bones. They traveled through morning mist, as their forms ghosting between trees. Arya led them north by instinct and the stars Vayne had taught her to read. Behind them, Shadowfrost territory fell away, but ahead lay possibility. As they disappeared into the forest, something shifted back at the burial site. The tree Arya had planted, which shouldn't bloom until spring, suddenly erupted with white flowers. Impossible blooms in the dead of winter, petals like snow against dark bark. No one was there to see it. The pack had already left, and the forest kept its secrets. But if anyone had been watching, they would have understood. Broken things can grow beautiful, given the right soil. And sometimes, the grave becomes the garden. Arya glanced back once at the territory she'd transformed from execution ground to kingdom. Smoke rose from the keep where wolves were waking, starting their day in a united pack that existed because she'd chosen growth over vengeance. Then she faced forward, toward the unknown, toward new packs and new challenges that would test everything she'd become. She was buried as an Omega and reborn as a queen. Now, she'd see if she could become a legend. The forest swallowed them whole, and the mist closed behind like a door shutting on one chapter while another opened ahead. Somewhere north, the Crimson Ridge Pack waited, not knowing that salvation wore the face of something they'd been taught to fear. Somewhere beyond them, 5 more territories struggled with problems only unity could solve. And walking toward them all, leading wolves who'd learned that strength meant more than sharp teeth and dominance meant less than trust. Shanaria carried the truth she'd excavated from her own grave. You don't survive darkness by becoming it. You survive by learning to carry your own light. By midday, they reached the first marker, a territorial boundary carved into ancient oak. Arya paused, letting her pack rest. This was it, the moment where her story expanded beyond one territory, one victory, one impossible triumph. Everything that came next would determine whether she was truly the queen the prophecy promised or just a survivor who got lucky once. Vayne shifted to human form beside her. No going back now. There never was, Arya replied. They crossed the boundary together, and the world opened up before them. Vast, dangerous, full of packs that didn't know they needed saving yet. Full of wolves who'd been taught that different meant threat, that change meant death, that the old ways were the only ways. Arya had been all of those things once, broken, buried, left for dead, and she'd come back anyway. The journey north continued. The legend was just beginning, and in the forbidden woods behind them, white flowers bloomed in impossible winter, marking the grave that had become a garden, the death that had become a birth, the ending that was really just the start of something greater. If Arya's transformation from buried Omega to legendary queen gave you chills, there's more where that came from. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story about the underestimated, the cast aside, and the broken ones who rise up to reshape their worlds. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next story.